So this is called the Experts Panel, and we have, starting at the end, Lauren Casalino, Bob Unger, Elizabeth Olson, Gaea Logan, and Dr. Lucy Holmes. So I want to welcome you all and thank you guys so much for being here. By way of getting ready for this panel, what we decided to do was to reach out to a lot of our members and ask them questions like, is there something you've always wanted to know from an accomplished group leader that you might be too embarrassed to ask? And you have an opportunity here to submit some questions and to have them answered anonymously. And we have collected some of those questions. And what we're going to be doing is putting these questions to our panelists. And the frame for this experience is that we're going to ask people to share the talking time. And the expectation is not that you would answer every question, but that if one question really resonates with you, that you might let us know, and we will pass this one mic that we have. We have a bit of a mic challenge here. We're going to pass this mic to whoever would like to address the question. After the first question, I'd actually like to see if everybody might answer this first question. But the format is we have some collected questions here, and then after I've gotten a chance to go through these questions, we're going to open it up to you and let you ask some questions, let you do some dialoguing with the panelists that we have here. And we were also thinking, because the keynote address did not give a chance to, we didn't have enough time following the keynote address to have any questions, thoughts, or associations from that. There'll be an opportunity towards the end of this presentation to have those thoughts and questions addressed as well. One thing I do want to acknowledge is that this is being recorded. So please be aware that whatever you're saying, whatever question you have, is going to be recorded. Okay. What's that? It's going to be used as a part of our online resource. So this could be available to membership who might want to access it on our digital archive. Okay. So the topic of this conference is desire, wishes, fears, and impulses in group psychotherapy. And I wanted to start off by asking you each to talk a little bit about your desire for group. Why group? And the range of possible experiences that we have, all the different modalities that are open to us as therapists. What is it about group that has made you really want to make it a central part of your practice?
I guess my own personal experience in group. I started with individual analysis, and that's a Gaea. And I think it repairs very early issues. But I think group is where you come into the world, and you learn to make better relationships. And I learned a lot in my individual analysis, but my life really changed when I started working in group. I was able to make constructive changes. So that's why I wanted to be a therapist.
There's a place we go individually. It's incredibly important for psychotherapy. And yet, there is a healing that comes out, there's this potential about in the context of the group. And I think that most of our wounding, if not all, actually comes out of interpersonal context. So it makes sense to me that the healing that's possible in therapeutic lives of Gaea is one piece of that. But when we have the group, the leader, in a sense, is our follower. The mechanisms, the curative mechanisms that can arise between group members I believe to do greater than the power of the individual every day. And my experience as a member, like Lucy, inspired me, in the 1970s. It's been many years since.
For me, I think the thing that I find so appealing about group is that, I can work with a client individually for years and have them join a group and then see so many different parts of who they are that never came out in the individual relationship. And so in my mind, working in a group is much more dynamic, and you have an opportunity to work on parts of the character that may not come through in the individual relationship alone. Because as an individual therapist, that person just has me to relate to, and I just see one side, the part that they bring to me. When they come into a group, they're going to see lots of other parts of me, and I'm going to see more parts of them. And in addition to that, there's an opportunity for multiple transferences to evolve over time, which I think offers an opportunity for just a tremendous amount of in-depth change in people's character. So that's one of the reasons why I love it. Plus, I just think you get the benefit of the support that people get from each other, the feeling of not being alone, the opportunity for more of a family piece to come through in terms of relationships with siblings, relationships with, maternal and paternal transferences that might happen in a group. So I just think it's really rich. It's fertile ground for all kinds of things to happen.
Well, mine is really informed, I think the best way to approach it, by my personal experience. When I stumbled into the first group I was in about 1969, 1970, I was 23 or 24, I was stunned by the level and intensity of emotional communication in that group. I'd never been in anything like that before. My family didn't have it. My engineering school certainly didn't have it. Well, that's what I was at the time. And I could not, that group was so difficult. It was on Tuesday, and I was stunned beyond belief until about Friday, and then Saturday was okay, and then Sunday I started fearing going back to the group again, and that lasted for about 2 years, and I couldn't talk in the group, and people, this was a very challenging group, and people, you're not talking, I have nothing to say. What do you mean you have nothing to say? It would go on, and that just went on for about 2 years. The only reason I didn't leave is because I was too embarrassed to leave. And then one day, it just hit such a height, I just burst out crying from all the pain of not having talked my whole life. And I left the group that day. I remember going down on the subway, and my body was different. It was totally different. Everything had changed, and that was it. And from that point on, that was it to this day.
Well, I think my that was it moment in terms of groups actually happened in Bob's group class when I was a student at Naropa, and I couldn't believe what was happening in this class because people were talking and it was flying around the room and Bob was in there, and it was like, whoa, there could be a group of people together that could actually be talking about what mattered, and we could actually dare to risk that, and Bob would actually invite and welcome and play with that and contain that in its anger and absorb that. And so I had an experience of the possibility of group that occurred right then in that class. But I think probably I was primed to want to work with groups really at birth when I was the youngest of 4 children. So I came into a household with 5 people, much older than me actually. And I think on an energetic level, I was just experiencing relationship. And I don't remember a time in my life when relationship was not the most important thing to me, or what was happening between people, whether it was myself with someone or others with each other, didn't matter more than anything else. So I've been sensing, observing, feeling affected by groups since I was born and caring about that really more than anything else. I mean, that includes the earth, but there's something about human relationship that I'm a human, that it's like this is my given field to live in, to play in, to try my best to create some kind of harmony and connection and vital life amongst us. And so that.
So one of the things that really stands out is just how incredibly stimulating group is. I mean, Dr. Olson was talking about all the different transferences that are possible and the visceralness of our experience as members and how life-changing that can be. And one of the things that I hear quite frequently from the professional supervisees, my own experience, is the emotional load that does get transmitted to the group leader with the induced feelings and what it's like to leave a group as a leader with a tremendous amount of very strong emotional experience that we don't always know what to do with. And I would be curious to hear you guys talk about how do you manage that kind of emotional stimulation and residue as a group leader?
I think I answered that. Supervision, very important to have a place to talk. Very important for the leader to have a place to talk. Because you do lead a group when you're the leader, full of feeling. And often confused. And it's really crucial to have a place to talk.
I think for me it's very much about the nervous system and the body. The kind of maybe undifferentiated affect or energy, whatever we want to call it, we can be so vulnerably dysregulated by the dysregulation that arises in group. And so before I work with any patient or group, or even the first 2 minutes of any group, I actually do some breath work and grounding, include the group in that. Afterwards, for me personally, I'm noticing what I'm noticing in my body. I'm noticing my nervous system. I'm noticing my breath. Is my exhale lengthened? And I think, really honestly, where I work that out is on horseback. I ride and feel the movement moving through my body.
Okay, so mine is a little different. I had this association years ago. Can you guys hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Years ago, Ormond came to Boulder, it was like 20 years ago. He came to Boulder, and I went to see him, and I remember people saying, how do you run 14 groups a week and have, 12 people or 15 people in each group? How do you do that and be okay when you leave? And he said, well, I run the group, and then I walk out, and I completely forget about them until next week. And I thought, wow, you get to have the freedom to not have to carry, this if you don't want to. And I guess one of the things that was coming into my mind is that, yes, definitely supervision. There's times when I lead a group where I'm carrying a lot, and I'm so happy to have, a colleague or a supervisor that I can talk to about it, or I don't know what to do with something, so I can help with that. But there's also, I think, a way too where I can take the feelings. What I like about modern psychoanalysis is that you can take a lot in, but you can also give a lot back to the group, and you can use the information that you're getting and find ways to feed it back in countertransference and transference of reactions that are happening between two people or the year before, whatever. So for me, there's a real interplay. So I don't actually feel a lot of the time, at least I'm not conscious of it, of leaving with a lot of feelings.
I think I'm somewhere in that camp, and again, I had the good fortune of being with Ormond for about 10 years and watching or experiencing the way he just fed it right back. Digested, of course, that he was always energized and would work with attention, with words, in the most unexpected, outrageous ways. And the problem was, especially when it was new, is that he was totally enjoying himself. That was really painful in the beginning. But after a while, I think myself and probably most people who worked with him, Lucy over there, really adopted that. And so to this day, for the most part, I just engage with the group, and when I leave, it feels just pretty complete. Not always, but pretty complete. You know, I exercise a lot and stuff like that. That's my thing. But a little different in that I was thinking of that in terms of the institutes, because I don't know the people. I didn't form the culture. The culture formed itself, and so I did have a lot of moments where I had to use my mind, and that's another way when you work a lot. I find you can release a lot of tension by talking to yourself about what's going on, noticing your tension, formulating where you are or not where you are. I find that very helpful also in the digestive process of what's going on.
So I would say that the hardest situation to work with for me is not group but couples in terms of what happens in my own experience of pain. So, but nonetheless, you know, individuals, couples, groups, of course we're relating with pain, we're relating with suffering. So for me it's, you know, body, heart, mind, what do I do? So on the mind level, how do I not go into despair about human beings suffering and about how we relate with each other? And that's, you know, that's a whole lot of seeing the beauty in people and recognizing our struggle and our humanity, and it's whatever I can do to remind myself of the possibility of love, to take in love when it happens, to you know, return to that basic goodness, right? Buddhist principles. So various ways of working with my mind. With my heart, you know, it's what do I love? You know, like I love the sunrise, I love the sunset, I love the face of a baby, I love human beings listening to each other with care. You know, I love many, 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 many things. So it's making sure that I am intentionally relating enough each day to what I love that my heart's not going into despair. And then with my body, it is such a nervous system, energetic kind of thing. And again, movement really helps. So, you know, whether it's dance or bicycling or skiing or, you know, just really consciously using breath to work through my body. So at any given time, I'm scrambling for any possibility of what's going to help me not be in some kind of constricted state of pain in the face of what is occurring in other people's pain. And that varies over time, but for sure, do as much of it as you can all the time.
So this is, I actually really enjoyed this question. This is more of a technique-oriented question, but the question is, what do you do when you're leading a group and you feel completely stumped?
I keep quiet. The wonderful thing about group is that the group is a genius collectively. And if I'm stumped, I have faith that there's someone in the circle who is not. So I try to help people talk. And sometimes some brilliant member will get me unstumped. So that's a difference again between the dyad and the group. You're working with a genius. So you've got somebody to consult, many.
Well, I'm also quiet, but I often feel sometimes that there's a productivity to that quiet, like I'm containing, I'm waiting for an arrival of a moment of awareness, and sometimes there's just this kind of ducking and hiding out. And like I'm really, when I catch myself ducking and hiding out, I might say, I'm freaking clueless right now. I'm really like, I'm confused, or I'm confused, wonder if anybody else is. Or I'm confused, and then I'll point to somebody who I have this instinct, has a brilliance for the moment, and I'll say, Susie, you know, would you talk to Freddie about what's going on? Because I don't know. I think you guys can figure something out here that's way better than me. So that has really more to do with my theory about growth, my theory of mind, and that I really believe that the leader is to follow, not always lead.
I think what I'm associating too is times in group when, as a leader, it's not so much that I feel stumped, it's more like I feel like I'm taken into an induction with someone, and I can't find my way out of it, I'm just in it. And I think it's a really good thing when it happens, even though sometimes it's really uncomfortable to be in it, because I think it's an opportunity that we're going to come through something in a new way if we can find our way through it. It doesn't feel good sometimes to be stuck in a place that feels unconscious and feeling kind of lost about what to do. But one of the things I have done that I think has been helpful, which is similar to these guys, is ask the group for help. So when I'm really stuck in something, knowing that I have, to some degree, a cooperative relationship, and that the group members have a cooperative relationship with me, that I can get help if I'm really in something.
Stuff being down here and hearing everybody smart and think I had to say something else maybe, but I'll do my best. Well, over time, I've learned that whatever is happening, there's a climate in the group that is, it's a system that's affecting everybody. So we're all, to some degree, in some feeling state that is resonant, even though it might not have words for it. So what I've learned over time, just to trust that, I love the free associative process. That's what happens when when you have about 40 years of analysis, you realize that you can trust your own free association. So if I check to see that, the only thing I really feel like I have to check is to see that I don't have a destructive impulse at that moment. And if I don't have a destructive impulse, I'll just say what comes to mind. And they'll either say, oh, or they'll say, well, that was stupid, or why'd you say that, or something like that. But then people just keep talking.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm feeling something, I'm wondering, is it also something that is in the group field or that others are feeling? So I'm always looking for an exchange in the Buddhist view. And so I might, kind of just try to get as curious as I can about what's my feeling state, what's going on that I'm feeling stumped, what reactions am I having to being stumped. Just try to get as curious and as layered and as subtle in my recognition of my own experience in that moment as possible. And, and then depending on the group, I might put it out there. I might say, I might just ask in general, so what's the quality of the energy here right now? What are people noticing about the group experience? What's energetically happening for you? Or I might say, I'm feeling really stumped. Anyone have any idea why I'm feeling that way? Or, so just get curious, play with it, try not to come out of destructive impulses, as you said, Bob, right? I think that's always a good starting ground.
So one of the other questions that continued to emerge from the membership was how to handle disclosure as a group therapist. When we are in the group feeling physical sensations or having emotional reactions to the group, how skillful is it to either contain that, to disclose that, how concrete to be in the disclosure by saying, I'm feeling anxious right now, I wonder if anybody else in the room is, or phrasing it as a question. How do you handle, how do you view, how do you respond to disclosure?
Do you mean disclosing how I'm feeling? Yeah. When I was young in this field, I never did that. I stuck by the book. I was taught to, ask 3 to 5 object-oriented questions and otherwise shut up. But as I get older, I do it more. And it usually has a pretty positive impact to disclose. I'm thinking of the weekends in New York. I do a lot of disclosure at the end of the weekend when we do sort of a wrap-up and talk about the process. And I'm comfortable with that. But again, I think what Bob said, you have to be on guard that you're not being destructive.
More likely to contain and stay curious, and to use whatever comes to mind about my feeling to gain information about the group, diagnostically, where we are, or perhaps developmentally, where we are in the group, with the group process developmentally. The structure of how I do a group is 10 minutes of mindfulness, and then, 60, 70 minutes of actual in-the-room work, and then a section of meta-processing at the end of the group. So I have that structure built in. I am maybe more likely to bring that into the meta-processing. And yet, not to be rigid, I'm not opposed. I think the question of self-disclosure is really about, I don't think it's useful to make content self-disclosure. It can be quite useful to make affective self-disclosure, and I think there's a big difference.
I think I used to be more tight about it, for sure. And over time, I've definitely loosened that to some degree. I think for me, it's a process of observing. I think as a group leader, part of what I do is observe my thoughts, my feelings, my impulses, stories or my own memories that might be coming to mind while I'm in the group. And sometimes if I think it might be helpful to share that with people in the group. And so I remember one time there was a group at CU that my husband and I were running together, Francis, and he really helped me to see how you could do this, but there was a ton of tension. It was like our first group, and it was all these interns coming together, and there was already a lot of fighting with each other, and it was over, I think, people's experience of identity and things like that. It felt very hot and charged already walking into our first group, because they all knew each other, they worked together. And I remember Francis started the group off by telling a story about how when he was little, he would get beaten up at school every day, and how what he really wanted was just to belong, and that he was scared and nervous on his first couple of days at school and getting beaten up and harassed, and how do you just, you want to belong. And him telling that story opened it up so that everyone else in the group started associating more to their own experiences of what it was like to belong and to come into a group and to start a group. And so for me, that was a really powerful learning experience to see, oh, I can be more free. I mean, I may be careful about it, but I think it can be helpful at the same time to share stories that are associations, because you may help other people be able to do more of that in the group as well.
Well, I find it very tricky because since I'm a great believer in the unconscious, I can only say what I'd like to think that I do, but that doesn't mean I do it, of course. So I can just tell you what I pretend that I think I do, or the way I think about it. But by and large, it doesn't come up that often for me, but there's a few parameters. One is I try to note both the intensity of my desire to share and my attachment to the information that I want to share and what that's about. That is, I try to see if I just want the person to know something about me because I want them to know something about me, or if it's coming up at a